Can you let us know the background of what was happening and the impact on the whole family, and what support you have tried, if any?
Moving away was really tough for the kids and for all of us, and lockdown, of course, exacerbated it. My son started to be incredibly rude, not just teenage rude, and over a 3 or 4 month period, relationships really started to deteriorate. His anger, which at the time was getting increasingly verbally abusive, and he was often in a lot of rages. And then that moved on to throwing and breaking things, and then physically hurting me. It was really distressing for everybody, his siblings, me, and of course him. It was exhausting as I was working as well, and there was a real mixed feelings really for me between outrage and upset and failing him, I guess, and the other kids, and most of all, how can somebody do this to someone they love? So I contacted the school and the pastoral lead, and they tried to offer him some support, but he just said everything was fine at home and everything was great, which clearly it wasn't. She gave me the details for Break for Change, which I don't think exists any longer, but somehow, and I'm not sure how, I got to speak to Jane. I remember it really well. I was sitting in the car, it was a really sunny day, telling somebody I'd never met lots of things that I'd not told anyone before, and I was so embarrassed and so ashamed, really, and didn't want him to be in trouble, because I'm the parent, right? But I didn't get any of what I've had when I've been speaking to my friends or people trying to help, which was, you need to tell him you're the parent, send him to his dad's, my husband would punch his lights out, or if he was your partner, that would be domestic abuse. And it was none of that. It was great. It was more, that sounds really tough, sounds awful for everybody. Let's think about this. And that was a brilliant first step for me to be able to say that my son hurts me. I want help. I want to help him. I want to keep my other kids safe too. And I guess that's what led me to Capa.
So you said to us that you reached out for support from Capa. So what support did you get? Was it just you? Was it the whole family? And what happened with that support? Did you see changes? Did you put things into place? Tell me about that time actually working with Capa.
So I found the aims really coherent and clear. It wasn't judgmental. It was really quite proactive and realistic and a soft approach. Initially Jane worked with me and got a feel for the family and so I could focus on the effects of all of us really, not just my son and me. And it was a real reminder that, of course, I knew that it impacted everybody, but that it's just not the quiet and the good ones are also impacted while they're being quiet and watching. Initially, she worked with me, and looking back, I was pretty broken. So it was really useful to have someone objective and advocate for the children and for me in respect of how they all may feel, well, whilst reassuring me that I was doing my best and actually quite a good job despite how overwhelming it all felt. And she gave me the confidence to act and question and to use strategies, simple strategies, things that I still use now and I will continue to use in all my relationships actually, whether home or not, going forward. Then after a while, she started seeing my son separately, something he was really resistant to do at first, but it happened, and he turned up every time and wouldn't talk to me about it, but at least I knew he was talking to somebody that I trusted. And then we got to the point quite a while after where we met on Zoom, all three of us in different rooms, and that allowed my son to speak freely and me as well, and say how we felt without any confrontation or shouting or storming out. She also had a session with him and his dad at one point too. So both my son and I drew up an agreement of behaviour and what we would try and implement. And as Jane say, what are your bottom lines? So what will you accept and what won't you accept? You know, don't sweat the small stuff, sort of thing. And this was something that clearly made the other kids feel really safe and gave me confidence in a weird way. I think the biggest impact of that was actually having those strategies and having my bottom line. It gave me the courage to call the police, something I thought I'd never do. I was so frightened of it. I don't know why. And this is one of the pivotal moments of change for me. You know, it actually showed my son that I'm not accepting this behaviour and I'm not showing the others it's acceptable. I don't want to be someone whose son hurt their partner or taught the other kids that this is acceptable behaviour. And the police were brilliant and de-escalated the situation, and the total opposite of my misconceptions. They'd be criminalised, they'd mess up his life forever. It couldn't be further from the truth. I think that was one of the best things in hindsight, not at the time, that could have happened. The other two received support too. They had sessions with Jane and got their voice heard. And it felt that everyone was being heard, which was the most important thing for them at the time. Even if we couldn't change the situation, to know that we were trying and that we were moving forward. So with my permission, she also liaised with the school so they could support the kids too, and they did it really well. So all the children were referred for support, and in various times and stages they went to Rise and Oasis. A few things that they refused, which was a shame, but ultimately it was their choice. So, I mean, things still can be a challenge now and again, but if I look back to that time, about 4 years ago, life is unrecognisable and in the best way. You know, we've had our ups and downs and still do. And it's not been a quick fix. Though, interestingly, at the time, my son would moan about having to see Jane. But he went every single time, his choice. And when things got tough or he was struggling, and he still to this day mentions, the first person he'll mention is Jane, and the first person he would contact would be Jane. And it was really reassuring for me to know that she would signpost him. Also, when the work was done and we stopped having Capa involved, that was really useful as well, because there were boundaries in place, and because he really respected Jane, and she said, look, I'm not a therapist, you know, this is what you need to do next, you know, I'll support you and I'll guide you, but this is what you need to do. He agreed, and he would never have gone if anyone else had suggested that. And it was all about building those relationships, which helped me build relationships with him. And he's still going, and he's still clearly benefiting from it. So that was brilliant.
So can I ask you, what would you say to other parents that may be thinking something isn't right with their relationship with their child, or their child is being verbally or physically aggressive to them? What would be your advice as a parent, and what would you say about contacting an organisation like Capa?
This is a really useful exercise for me, because it's got me thinking of how far we've come. My advice now would be to be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can do, being the best you can be, and wanting your child to be the best they can be. Parenting is tough, brilliant, rewarding, rubbish all at the same time, and we're all learning, and there's no rule books, and life gets in the way. So my mantra that I try and remember is that happy people don't behave like my son was behaving. And then I try and reframe it and think of it from he's behaving this certain way, what's he actually trying to say? Because anger is just a symptom. And fundamentally, home should be a safe place emotionally and physically for all in it. And Capa helped me with that. So I wouldn't think twice about asking for help from Capa. I felt downtrodden, ridiculous, that it was all my fault that I was in this situation. If I'd been a better parent or a person, we wouldn't be here. I was embarrassed, and I either felt told off for putting up with behaviours or worried I was making a fuss. There really is nothing to lose and everything to gain by contacting Capa. It isn't a quick fix, but progress is progress. And you will be okay, and you do have them as cheerleaders for you and your family. I never thought I'd be here now applying for student loans with my son, looking for him to go off to university in a couple of months. Truthfully, I was counting down the days he was leaving home 4 years ago, which sounds terrible, but I just wanted some peace. And now I see someone who I'm excited for on his new adventure, and I'll really miss him so much. I really will. And I doubt very much that this would have been the outcome if I hadn't spoken to Jane on that sunny day in my car in 2020.